Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Todd Klindt's SharePoint podcast number 258, recorded live Monday, August 17th, 2015. Mark Chrisman in the chat room, always helpful. Always, I can always look forward to Mark's helpful hints. He wanted me to remember that this was podcast 256. And today was August 4th, probably of 2009, I'm guessing, if you would have continued that. But fortunately for me, I've got all my notes in a row here so I can see the numbers. So the joke's on you, Mark. But I am Todd Klindt, your host this evening for the next 30 minutes or so as we talk about SharePoint and Microsoft cloudy things and all other manner of things. You can find out more about me at toddklindt.com/blog. Or on Twitter at Todd Klindt. This video, if you've got the audio version, if you're of the 90-some% that download the audio of this, if you would like to see my smiling face, you can go to youtube.com/ToddKlindtNetcast and watch the video. And while you're doing all that and you're going, wow, how does he do all this crazy stuff with the video and the audio and the fancy clothes and all that? It's because of Rackspace. So go on out to sharepoint.rackspace.com and give them a click or two because they're supporting all this. They pay me. They help me do the fun things that I talk to you guys about every day. They send me flags and PowerPoint presentations and all kinds of crazy stuff. So sharepoint.rackspace.com. And also you can go to www.rackspace.com/Microsoft for other Microsoft yet not SharePoint-y things that we do. We got our fingers in everything Microsoft's doing these days, and we would love you to read up on it. So www.rackspace.com/Microsoft. All right, speaking of Microsoft products, PowerPoint. All right, production notes. Had another little YouTube hiccup last week. It wasn't as bad as the week before. They didn't lose every other minute of my podcast like they did with 256. That was a great trick there. No, last week, there was just a couple of little spots where the audio dropped out that I assume that, like a network thing or something. And when I edit this, I've got it open in Camtasia and I can see the little histograph at the bottom and I can see the drops in the sound. Now, I know that I don't not talk for big gaps of time. That's just not my style. So whenever I see those, I jump to them. And last week, there were a couple of little hiccups. But I told you the week before that I was going to have a backup, and that my backup was going to be Audacity. And I had that running last week. I did not lie to you fine folks. I had it running. It was recording as a backup. And as soon as I saw those hiccups, I'm like, YouTube, I gotcha. I got a backup. So I cranked open Audacity and looked at the file, and it was unusable. And the reason for that was because it had defaulted to my default microphone. Now, I'm using the Yeti Pro. That's what I record my podcasts with. But you may be surprised to learn that I don't use this every day when I work at this computer. When I do video conferences and things like that, I do not use this microphone. Instead, I use this little Logitech USB headset. So when I had set Audacity up originally and all that kind of stuff, this was plugged in and this was the default recording device. So last week when I started Audacity and started recording, it recorded this, which was clear over there. So when I went to my backup file last week, if you listened real hard and put your ear real close to the speaker, you could kind of hear me talking because it was that dumb mic over there. But this week, I have got it recording the correct microphone. I'm looking at it. The little bars are bouncing. So now YouTube, throw your best shot at me no matter what. When this is done, I will have an MP3 version of this podcast. So I apologize for that. It's kind of one of those things you give up, though. Recording this in the cloud and all that. It's been pretty good for me. I mean, we've been doing this for a couple of years and haven't had a lot of problems. But I have more good news. There will not be a podcast for me to screw up next week. Next week, I'm going to be at SP TechCon. And because of schedules and some other stuff, I'm not going to be able to do the podcast on Monday night like I normally would. I'm going to be traveling in the afternoon. So even if I was to try to move it, then that wouldn't work. And I talked to Shane and, he had something else going on, which I think was really rude on his part. He should leave all of his Monday nights open for me so that when I get a hold of him at the last minute, he can fill in for me. But he's going to be someplace else. So no podcast last week. I'm gonna put up a rerun. I'll just randomly pick a podcast from the previous 200 and whatever, just throw that one up there for you guys. I think and Lori brings up an interesting thing too, that Shane also gets a little wiggy when Lori's not there to help him out. She'll be at SP TechCon with me, and Laura Rogers in the chat room. She's going to be at SP TechCon next week, and there's some other folks might be there. Shout it out in the chat room if you're going to be at SP TechCon next week. But we're going to be whooping it up, having fun, and Shane would be all alone. So the thought of that was just too terrifying for him, and he gave it all up. So I will be back in 2 weeks, whatever 17 plus 7 is carry this. So 24th, I will be in Boston, and then 24 plus 7 in January, February, I forget. But 2 weeks from tonight, I will be back. 31st, Lori in the chat room says it's 31st. I have no reason not to believe her. And so Joanne brings up in the chat room that we record the podcast at SP TechCon a lot. We did it at the last one, but just the schedules, there was just a lot going on. I didn't want to try to do it this time. But next week, or 2 weeks from then, I got your back. We'll do it then. I'll see you then. On to the topics, the meat, the potatoes. Where to start? Well, I think the big thing to start, to talk about first, is SharePoint 2016 beta watch day 17. Here we are, still no SharePoint 2016 beta. I feel every day like we're getting just a little bit closer to whenever that beta is going to drop. But as of day 17, we have no SharePoint 2016 beta to play with just yet. But this does give me an opportunity to get just every bit of mileage eked out of a blog post that I wrote a couple of weeks ago about how you can get ready for the SharePoint 2016 beta. You can go to toddklindt.com, ready for SP 2016 beta, and read all about that. Basically how to get your environment ready and configured for it, and the things that you're going to want to have, your SQL servers and your Windows servers, and have some fake users set up. Have a SharePoint 2013 database ready to upgrade and see how that process goes and all that kind of stuff. So you can have all that done. They've given us plenty of time to get that ready. And then when it does, you're just going to drop that in. You're going to have that VM just chomping at the bit, waiting for those bits, and you're going to install it, and it's going to be glorious, and you're going to be so glad you read that blog post that I've been pimping for the last 3 weeks now. I'm getting every bit of mileage that I can out of it. So do that, and again, as soon as that beta hits, I'll throw out a blog post and probably a tweet, maybe a smoke signal. I might put a sign in my yard, so if you're driving through Ames, it might be a sign out there. But just every day, just as excited as we can get. All right, what else do we... So last week, we talked about the August 2015 cumulative update for SharePoint 2013 and how it added the cloud search service application. So a quick recap of that, starting with this cumulative update for SharePoint 2013, and then just out of the box with SharePoint 2016, whenever that thing finally comes out, will be the ability to take your on-prem search service application and marry it up to the cloud, the Office 365 SharePoint Online search service application. Kind of meld those two indexes together, do some magic bit work in the background there. The on-prem version of that, the on-prem bits for that came out with the cumulative update last week, so it's part of the search service app now, but it is not quite ready yet for any of those of you who ran right out and set that all up and then was curious why it didn't work. The public portion of that, the Office 365 portion of that, is not ready yet, is not published yet, and that will be lit up on September 7th. So you can get that all ready, and then on September 7th, you'll be able to wire that all up to your SharePoint online tenant. But I got everybody excited about it last week, and then after I realized, after I stopped recording, I realized I hadn't told you guys that the, the Office 365 part's not quite there yet, so there's nothing to hook up to. But it's coming, and like I said, SharePoint 2016 is going to do that out of the box. And if you have SharePoint 2010, you're going to be able to federate through that. The SharePoint 2010 search service app won't do it natively, but you can consume the SharePoint 2013 one. So there's a lot of options for you there. Another related topic, again, the August 2015 cumulative update for SharePoint 2013 came out last week. As always, you should not install cumulative updates immediately when they come out, at least not in your production environments. I installed some test environments, some proof of concept environments last week, and I August 2015 CU'd them up one side and down the other, because that's just what just what I do. And for test environments, for proof of concept environments, that is good, but don't do it for production environments. And this particular cumulative update they've gotten pretty tight lately, but this one has a couple of potential issues. So there was a search issue that was apparently introduced in the July 2015 cumulative update that August also has. So be careful with that. And you can find out about that on Stefan Gossner's page. And let me link that in there, but it's in the comments for this post. And July had it as well. August apparently does not fix it, but you get some weird query issues around time zones when you're doing searches. So you don't want to break search in production. Search is a pretty important thing. And also, Adrienne Andrews hit me up on Twitter, and she's also having a problem with the August 2015 CU for SharePoint 2013. She's having problems attaching files to list items. So, list item attachments. And so I went and looked. She very smartly, she was able to reproduce it in her environment. She went and created I don't have my notes, created an MSDN forum post about it to see if anybody else has had the problem. So I'm alerting to that, and I'm waiting to hear about that. So as soon as a couple other people can reproduce that, then I'll probably put it in my wiki. But for now, I don't have it listed. So Mark in the chat room is asking, for testing CUs, do I have a test script or is it poke and prod ad hoc? It is the latter, and that's because the product is so big, it's kind of impossible to test everything. So like the two that I mentioned now are pretty obvious, and you could test uploading a file to a list item or do queries. But over the years, these CUs have had such weird errors. I don't have a Hammer CU script. What I should have, and I work with a lot of different customers, so I don't have this myself, but if you're an on-prem, if you run a thing, you should have a list of the things that your customers do. You should have a list of, kind of a punch list of things that you need to test. And these would be the things that you test with patches and with new versions of the software and new environments that you build. Anytime you install any kind of farm solutions or new branding or any of these things, you should have a list. And sadly, it's going to be several pages long. It's going to be create a list item, edit a list item, delete a list item, upload a document, delete a document, all those kind of just redundant, horrible things. But that's the kind of list you would need really to go through these. So that's kind of why, because it's so tedious work and so tough, that's kind of why I bring all that together with my wiki pages so that you can see what other people do and kind of crowdsource. That's the word we're going to call that. I've been doing this for how many years? We're going to call this crowdsourcing now. I crowdsource the quality assurance part of these CUs for you guys. But I don't have anything in place. I don't use Load Runner or anything like that to test them. But as always, test them for a couple of months, see what's going on. If you need the cloud search service application and you're itching to get this new patch out early, again, just be very careful. These patches, they do bite you sometimes, and you cannot uninstall them. So be very, very cautious. Another thing that showed up in the August 2015 CU for SharePoint 2013 is support for the hybrid scenario picker. And this is something that sits in SharePoint Online, but it wedges itself into SharePoint 2013. And this is kind of a wizard-based way through SharePoint Online to wire up some of these hybrid scenarios. So right now, they let you wire up the OneDrive for Business and the Sites functionality. This is stuff that's coming out. One of the things that Microsoft is doing a bang-up job with is making hybrid easier. Every month, every week, it seems like there's something new coming out that makes hybrid SharePoint easier to do. And I think that's the right way. I think they're absolutely going the right direction with this. Very few people are going to be able to go all into the cloud. And so that means they're going to be going hybrid. And hybrid is just so confusing to folks. If you haven't done it before, getting the authentication pieces set up and then getting the server-to-server authentication pieces set up for SharePoint is just not intuitive. And so I think all these little tools and tricks and stuff that Microsoft comes up with is just going to make it that much easier. So check that one out. I put a link to that in the chat room, and obviously I have it in the show notes for this. But the hybrid scenario picker is something that's been new recently. So another thing, so last week, and I talked about this with the shameless self-promotion the last couple of weeks, last Tuesday, I was honored to be a guest at the Mississippi PowerShell user group. My friend Mike Robbins was kind enough to allow me a stage there and allow me to bore his group for an hour or so. and had a great time. I did a session, kind of a warm up for SP TechCon next week, and I entitled it Conquering Azure and Office 365 with PowerShell. And basically, I went through the Office 365 or the SharePoint Online commandlets for PowerShell, the Azure commandlets for PowerShell, and then some CSOM, some client-side object model things that you can use to fill in the gaps. And those guys were kind enough. They recorded all that, and you can get the recording at mspsug.com. And I will put a link to that in my show notes, and I may blog it. We'll see. But that's an hour and 11 minutes or so of me talking. The group there had a lot of questions, so that was pretty helpful when I got to hear what those guys had to say. I'm a SharePoint guy, and so I see everything through the SharePoint lens. And when I play with PowerShell, I think of it as SharePoint PowerShell. I mean, I think it's PowerShell, but it's really the SharePoint version of PowerShell. So it's always fun when I can talk to PowerShell folks that aren't SharePoint folks and kind of get their view on things and get their questions. And that was very much like what that was. And everybody in that chat room, they weren't PowerShell folks. They weren't, Office 365 folks, but they were all touching some of these same things, some of the hybrid things, some of the authentication things that I've been playing with lately. And it was a really good discussion. So go ahead and watch that one, especially if you can't make it out to SP TechCon, then you can kind of get an idea. The SP TechCon presentation will be a little bit better because it's been practiced a couple of times since before I do it. And then some new stuff has come out. But I really think hybrid is the way, and I've always thought that PowerShell is the way, for the last 5 years or so. And mixing those two together is just a couple of my favorite things. So go ahead and watch that out there. And again, thanks to Mike and all the folks for putting up with me. I would love to do that again if they would have me. I had a blast. I like chatting with folks. I'm excited about PowerShell, so getting to chat with other folks that are excited about PowerShell is always a good time. Speaking of that, the Azure team just within this last week updated the Azure PowerShell commandlets, and those are out on GitHub. So you can go to github.com/Azure/Azure-PowerShell and check those out. And they've got a change log in there. I'm almost a little worried there's almost too many places to get the Azure PowerShell stuff now. When I was setting up all the links and testing everything out for last week's presentation for the user group, it's starting to get a little confusing. I like that there's a lot of PowerShell here and there, but it's getting a little confusing. But the GitHub, I think, is the official repository for that. So you can go out there and download those. Those are great if you're doing Azure work, you're doing work with users and sites and all that kind of stuff, all the kind of things that I talk about in my session for the PowerShell group. So that's all good stuff. I was glad to see that out there. So on the same lines, I saw this last week and was very happy, very excited. So I tell you guys this all the time. I'm not a developer, and I don't pretend to be a developer. And even though I've used the words object model in this very podcast, that in no way, shape, or form suggests that I have any developing skills whatsoever. But I did see this link last week, and it made me very excited. And it is a developer preview, programming model preview for the combination. Well, so Microsoft is combining Azure AD logins and Microsoft account logins. So one of the problems that Microsoft has had over the last couple of years is they've got this huge cloud platform that in a lot of ways is an evolution of or derivative of other technologies. So they've got, Azure virtual machines, which bear a striking resemblance to Hyper-V virtual machines. And they've got Azure Active Directory, which looks an awful lot like, the Passport usernames we've had forever, Passport, Live ID, and now they're called Microsoft accounts. So it's a lot of the same technology, but they kind of bring it together. But the problem was, in the background, the APIs weren't the same. And that caused problems for making things easy to program and making, PowerShell scripts or developer stuff or any of that, make it easy to move things from on-prem to the cloud because you handle a virtual machine one way here, you handle it a different way here, and it would just be great if you handled it the same way and just supply different endpoints, that kind of stuff. And they've been working on this for a while. This is not a new problem. I'm not opening their eyes to anything they didn't already know about. So they've been combining that, and every little step that they make makes it easier for us to consume their stuff, makes it easier for us to go onto the cloud and do hybrid things, stuff like that. And so this last week, I saw this article about converging the Microsoft account and the Azure Active Directory account for web applications. And it makes perfect sense. But what they have done is they've kind of combined both of those accounts. So if you've got a web application or a website or whatever, and you're consuming Azure ACS, which is the Azure Identity stuff, you can now, in your dropdown, you can have an Azure Active Directory account. So when you type your username and password in, you type in your username, it looks like an email address. Azure can look at that email domain and say, okay, this is an Azure thing, or this is whatever. It can do that, but now they've kind of released the API for this, but now you'll also be able to just drop in a Hotmail account there. And the API will understand that at Hotmail or at Outlook.com is a Microsoft account. And in the back end, it will just go ahead and grab, talk to that authentication store the same way that it does Azure Active Directory. So as a developer, you don't have to do anything different. You can consume these IDs from wherever you'd like. Now, right now, they show some screenshots of it. And right now, the Hotmail bit looks a little different, but they're going to fix that so that all looks the same. But this is a great thing. So it's going to be easy for guys, like me or whoever. If I want to let people sign up for my blog and leave comments and things like that, now I can bring these users from anywhere. Another piece of that to consider, though, if you're a company or whatever, you've got a very mature Azure Active Directory, you can also already add Hotmail accounts to Azure Active Directory. So you can, like I've got, if I had toddklindt.com in Azure AD, I can create users from there, Todd at toddklindt.com, Larry and Daryl at toddklindt.com. I can sync from my local Active Directory up into there, which is another type of account in there. And then I can also add Hotmail type accounts. I can already do that in Azure AD. So what they're doing now is just adding it so that for the programming stuff on the other side. But this all just goes to show that this identity thing it's a big deal. It's coming, and all the talk I've been doing about it recently is kind of the way things are going. So again, I've talked about it. We IT pros have had a rough couple of years, and we haven't been sure where we're going to be going. And I think I've got a renewed excitement for my job because of identity, because of all the options that I've got with identity and figuring these things out. This is good stuff. So even though you're not a developer and you probably can't use it right now, I encourage you to go out and read that blog post and maybe just skim it, just look at the pictures, but kind of see where the future's going with identity. The last couple of things I wanted to talk about are just dumb little things that I have stumbled across over the last week and thought would be interesting. And the first was a very random Windows 10 tip. Windows 10 now natively has print to PDF built in. So over the last however many years, Microsoft has flirted with printing to PDFs, and some versions of Office had it, and then they didn't, and then you had to install a pack to get it to work, and then you didn't. And for years, there have been a bunch of different third-party apps that would let you print to PDF. I think Fox had one, and there's like Cute PDF or something, a bunch of these little add-ons, and all of them would work in the way that they would install a system printer, a Windows printer that happened to be a PDF file. So when you would try to print to PDF, then it would pop you for a username and it would save as PDF. But there was just all these different ways to do it, and it was never the same on any one computer. I've got one. Well, I've since rebuilt this machine, but I had two different ones set up before, and one of them would always lock up emails from Delta. So when you book a flight from Delta, you get this email and it's got logos everywhere and it's HTML and it's got all kinds of markups and stuff. And I would need to submit that as an expense, so I would print it to PDF. But that page and that email was so busy that there was one PDF printer that would always it would lock Outlook up. And Outlook, I'm sure, is single threaded if it's even got a single thread of its own. And I would just not be able to do email. So I have two machines at my desk, so I have to be very cognizant of printing that particular email to that particular PDF driver on a machine that I was okay with that thing just churning for like 10 minutes. That's always been a problem. And like I said, there's been a lot of different things. So I was poking around on one of my Windows 10 boxes, and I have not paid much attention, but print to PDF was in there. And I'm like, what? Microsoft print to PDF? What's this? I've not installed anything what? And so I started poking around. Yeah, it's in there. So anything from Notepad on up, just go into print or hit Control P and Microsoft Print to PDF, and it's just in there, and it opens up fine with anything else. Eric Harlan brings up a thing. Not that I want to give Eric Harlan a lot of credit, but a bunch of people saw him bring it up in the chat room. So he mentions that it has native screen recording like Camtasia. It does. And that is for the gamer mode. So you can do Windows G inside of Windows 10. And it brings up this gamer mode, and this is for gamers. I don't game on my PC. I don't game really anywhere. But for gamers that want to record their game things and show their friends and all that kind of stuff, that's now built into Windows 10. It's the Windows G thing. There's a bunch of stuff you can set up, but that's built into Windows 10. Now, as a lover of Camtasia and Snagit and all tools TechSmith, I've looked at it. It's not as good as Camtasia, but it's free, and that's a very strong appeal. Free is very nice, but if you're doing legitimate stuff like this, I'm producing podcasts and things like that, Camtasia is still the way to go. But the Windows G thing, if you've got Windows 10, by all means, pop in there and check that out. Also, there's the snipping tool, which I think is still in Windows 10, so that does screenshots. There's a lot of different tools out there. And I will say for that, Snagit from TechSmith is like $30. And it's money well spent. I've never heard anybody say, I wish I hadn't spent that $30 on Snagit. That phrase has never been uttered. Probably this is the first time it's even been uttered, ironically, because it's just a great program. But Windows 10, there's a lot of great stuff in there. I've got some blog posts I need to do about Windows 10. I just haven't written them. I'm so lazy. But Windows 10 is working out pretty well. I will say, though, that I've got a bunch of devices I have not put it on. I put it on a single small tablet here, a couple of my small tablets, but I don't like how Windows 10 has changed the start screen, which is funny because that was the whole thing that people wanted, that they hated about Windows 8. So on tablets, I like the start screen being full screen. But in Windows 10, if you go into tablet mode, it's kind of got two columns, and you can't have a column more than 3 wide inside of Windows 10. So I can't get the full screen because you can't have two block wide things next to each other. And so that's been very frustrating for me. So my main tablets that I use the most, I have not upgraded yet because I haven't figured out a way to do that doesn't make me cry. So what I'm going to have to do is figure out which live tiles I want 2 wide and which tools I want 1 wide, and then line them up so that they're 3 wide since I can't go 4 wide. But I haven't done that yet. But I'm getting Windows 10. I put it on my Surface Pro. That's sitting back there. That's why that's sitting over there. I've got it on there, and that's been working pretty well for me. But just keep rolling out. Windows 10's been treating me pretty well. The final thing, this is very apropos. The final thing was something that I saw wandering around the internet a couple of days ago, was some Microsoft researchers stumbled upon a way to improve wearable battery life. And this is funny because you'll notice I'm not wearing my band right now. The reason I'm not wearing my band is because the battery died right before the show started. So I've got it over here on the charger, and it's back to it's about 50% now. But the battery on it died. I like the Microsoft band. It's got a couple of rough edges, but the worst part is the battery life. It just, every day and a half, I got to recharge this silly thing. And so now it's interesting that I'm talking about this post right now. So what they found was these devices, you got to pair this to your phone, and I've got it paired to my my Android phone over here, and it copies things over and all that. What they found was that it takes far less electricity to constantly beam data using the Bluetooth low power thing over to your phone than it does to save it to RAM first, queue it up, and then shoot it over. The act of writing to the memory inside of the device takes significantly more electricity and more power than just beaming it over. So what they discovered was a great way to improve the wearable's life is to never save anything locally and just constantly beam everything over, which works great if your device is nearby. Obviously not so great if it's not, but I'm sure that they can figure that out. So I'm thinking, because I've got a Fitbit that does that. I've got all kinds of little things. So I think this is a great discovery because, so now there'll be something where it'll ping the device every once in a while and keep streaming unless the device goes away. But that's the biggest thing that just kills me about this band is the battery dying all the time. I know Lori Gowan in the chat room, she's got one. Joanne Klein's got one, and they're all doing it the same thing that they charge. Now, Lori does a similar thing that I do. The battery dies very quickly, about once a day, but it also charges pretty quickly, or at least you get the first 80% pretty quickly. So, I can't charge it at night if I want to do the sleep tracking, but I can charge it while I'm showering in the morning. So I've got a band charger in the shower, and while I'm getting ready in the morning, putting my face on, showering, all that kind of stuff, I've got the band charging. I couldn't wear it anyway, and that keeps me going for 5 or 6 days. But it doesn't, it's not enough. So the 15-20 minutes a day that it charges doesn't quite catch it up. And so then by like Friday or Saturday, I need to let it set for an hour or so just to kind of top it off. But that works. And the other thing is Amazon has band charging cables, and I forget what they cost, but I ordered a couple of them a while back. So I've got one here at my desk. So that's whenever this thing dies and I'm sitting at my desk, I can charge it. I've got one that I throw in my backpack. So when I travel, I don't have to worry about packing one. And then I've got the one in my bathroom that charges it in the morning. So as a band owner, having additional band chargers was just necessary cost. You just got to do it because the battery just doesn't last very long. So in the chat room, Jack asked when we can expect a Surface Pro 4. I don't think they've officially announced anything yet, so I haven't heard. Eric Harlan says he charges his Fitbit once every week and a half. Yeah, I've got a Fitbit 1, I think. And let me see what the little guy is here. And I charge it about once every week and a half, something like that. So yeah, here's my Fitbit 1. I'm not going to light up the steps. It's pretty pathetic because today was the day I had to charge it, and then I left it at my desk and forgot it. So I didn't carry it for most of the day because it was charging. But yeah, so this little thing, it lasts about a week, but it does a whole lot less than my band does. So I'll give my band a little bit of credit. But it's funny that even having a band, my Fitbit is still my record, my step record. That's the one that really counts. What I use for everything. So just fun stuff. We all have these little gadgets, smartwatches and phones and everything. So every little bit they can do to eke out more battery is good to go. Okay, well, we're in the home stretch here. And the good news is, because I had the Mississippi PowerShell user group thing last week, I have less shameless self-promotion to do. But a week from today, I'm doing SP TechCon. You can go to sptechcon.com. I'm going to meet a bunch of you out there. Lori Gowan's going to be there. Laura Rogers is going to be there. I'm not sure who else is going to be there. It's going to be a great time. If you are at SP TechCon, and you see me roaming around, I'll be at the Rackspace booth a bunch. I think I'm going to be there Wednesday afternoon for a while. Swing by. For goodness sake, swing by, find me, introduce yourself, shake my hand, tell me who you are. I would love to talk to you. No matter how busy I look like I am or how much I'm pretending to laugh at whoever I'm talking to's conversation, whatever you've got to say is more important. I would love to hear from you. So by all means, at SP TechCon, come find me. And then next week, I'll be doing my PowerShell with Office 365 and Azure presentation, and then an upgrading to SharePoint 2013 presentation. That's next week, SP TechCon. Then I get a couple weeks off, and then SharePoint Alooza is down in Branson, Missouri. That's September 18th and 19th. You can find out all about that at sharepointalooza.org. I think if you sign up today, you get some kind of a discount or something. I don't remember. But I can't remember what I'm talking about there, but I'm going to be down there hanging out on September 18th and 19th. So come find me. Again, shake my hand, say hey. I would love to meet you. And then the month after that, October 26th through the 29th, I will be at Dev Intersections. You can find out all about that at devintersection.com. And I don't think I've decided what I'm going to speak about there either. Pretty much, I just beg my way into these conferences, and then those guys, and I'll just do whatever those guys tell me to do. So if they want me to sweep the floors or fill people's drinks or any of that kind of stuff, I'll just do whatever. I'm just happy to be involved somewhere. Just glad to be in there. So you can go to devintersection.com and sign up there and see me out in Las Vegas. So thanks everybody. Again, you get next week off. So I will try to find a funny rerun or something to put up. But that's all good. Thanks everybody in the chat room. I'm going to stick around for a little bit. I'll chat with you guys, but thanks for you guys. Hopefully YouTube didn't drop anything this week, but I've got a good backup over here. So even if they do, I've got good audio. But thanks everybody, and I'll see you in 2 weeks.